Hello, and welcome back to the Rock Code Academy. I'm your host, David Flanagan, although most people know me as Rock Code across the internet. Today is an episode of Rock Code Live where we take a look at open source software to see how it can help make our day-to-day lives a little bit easier in what is a vast, evolving, and complex ecosystem. Today, we're taking a look at feature flagging using a project called Flipt. And I am joined by Mark and George. Hey guys, how's it going?
Hey.
Hey, good. How are you?
Oh, thanks for asking. Nobody ever does that.
Do they not?
Yeah, I'm actually doing all right. I've been a little bit stressed this week because I missed a few days to food poisoning. But it's nice to be back in front of a camera playing with some pretty cool software again. Now, for the people watching, before we even talk about what a flag or a feature is, can you both tell us a little bit more about you? And let's just do it clockwise. So we'll start with you, George. Off you go.
Cool. Yeah. Cool. Hey, I'm George. I work on Flipt, unsurprisingly, with Mark. I'm based in the UK, in a city called Brighton, just south of London. I've been working with Mark on this for last year, and yeah, I used to work with Mark some years ago, and that's how we came together again to tackle feature flags. Yeah. That's me.
All right. Thank you very much. Mark?
Cool. Yeah, so I'm Mark. I'm the founder of Flipt, and I am based in Raleigh, North Carolina, on the East Coast, US. And so as George alluded to, we have been working together on this for about a year. I worked on it for a few years before this, kind of as a side project. Before going full-time on Flipt, I was at GitHub for about 3 years. And then before that, I was at a company called CodeShip, which is where George and I worked and met. We worked together for about 2.5 years, I think.
Wow. So you're like moving up the stack instead of down the stack, right? So you did CI/CD, then you went to Git hosting, which I guess has been down the stack, and now you went, no, fuck that, let's go to feature flags, and you went straight back up the top.
Yep, just all over.
All over the place.
Well, I'm assuming, these are engineers, these are smart people, you find problems, you like to solve them. So I'd love to learn more about how you got into like the position where you were sitting there and going, tea, coffee, beer, whatever it may be. Let's fix feature flags. Like, tell me a bit about the background.
Yeah, I had always been kind of enamored with feature flags ever since I learned about them. It's not one of those things that they taught in university, or at least they did when I went to university. And I really was introduced to them kind of midway through my career at another startup I worked at. And I realized the power of feature flags and how you can just basically separate your releases of your software from deployments and easily respond to incidents and test things in production and all that good stuff. One thing I realized as my career progressed was I saw these companies starting to use feature flags, and another thing I saw though was that everyone was kind of reinventing the wheel and writing feature flag software themselves. And so I think at 3 or 4 of the last companies I worked at, each one of them had an in-house feature flag solution. And I thought, this is kind of crazy. Why would everyone reinvent? I realize, from the outset, feature flags don't seem that complicated. So it's okay, we'll just put something in a database and, it's just an if-else statement and we'll just create some APIs. But as time progresses, people build up features on top of these feature flag solutions, and they just kind of lead to sprawl and a lot of extra things that you don't think about from the start. And I was like, it doesn't make sense to me that companies are spending their engineering resources on implementing their own feature flag solution when that's not even what the company sells. That's not what their bread and butter is, right? So it just seemed like wasted effort. And even at GitHub, hopefully I'm not giving away any secrets, but GitHub, as big as it is, it's at the end of the day a big Rails monolith. That's what you see when you log into github.com. Obviously, there's all these external services now, like code spaces and Copilot and GitHub package registry and all this stuff, but they still interface with the monolith for getting feature flag data. And the solution that GitHub uses, or at least they used when I was there, was a Ruby gem called Flipper that they built on top of throughout the 10 plus years that GitHub has been around. And so they basically built their own feature flag solution, but in order to make it scale and make it accessible for all these external services, they had to end up like creating internal APIs, poking holes in firewalls, and creating clients in all these different languages now that GitHub uses. And I just thought that's crazy that there's this group of engineers who maintains this feature flag solution at GitHub when they could be doing, a ton of other different things. And so that was kind of the impetus for Flipt. I know that was a very rambling answer. But basically I thought, why don't we build a feature flag solution that is meant for engineers that they can just kind of get up and running and works in their stack, so they don't have to maintain it themselves.
Nice. Awesome. That's a pretty comprehensive overview of why you've done this. So let's come at it from a different angle, right? Like, I think we understand the importance of feature flags. We understand some of the challenges. We definitely understand why people shouldn't be building their own solution for this, right? It's one of these problem domains that seems, from a naive set of eyes, really simple. But actually, once you start building out a real production like feature flagging system, I imagine those complexities really start to surface themselves. And I'm sure we're going to get into that as we talk about what Flipt is and how it delivers and all that stuff. But let's, again, come at it from another angle. I'm going to try not to just ramble at you now. But you've decided, right, I've seen this at GitHub. We want to solve this problem. You must have looked to see if there were other open source projects out there. What was the point, the inflection point where you went, you know what, these don't do what I wanted to do. We need to build something else. Like, what was happening at the time, and what did you think could be different with a potential solution?
Yeah. I mean, I guess back, this was several years ago. I was a bit naive myself, and, I briefly looked at what other solutions were out there. And at the time, the big player, and still is, I think, LaunchDarkly, right? And so that is what everyone knows or everyone thinks of when you say feature flag solution.
Yeah.
They have all the big bucks, the big marketing dollars. And, to me, a SaaS tool or a SaaS feature flag solution didn't make a lot of sense for what I thought feature flags were used for and should be used for. And that's mainly because of the latency that's involved from making requests from your applications to this external SaaS that you don't control. And especially when you think about where feature flags are embedded in your code base, they're usually in hot paths, like request paths. And so any downtime in your feature flag solution means that your code then fails. And so to me, a SaaS was a non-starter, right? And GitHub felt the same way. That's why they didn't use a SaaS tool. And so I looked at, okay, what self-hosted feature flag solutions are out there? And I believe at the time there was Unleash. This was a few years ago. And hopefully it's cool to just name drop these things.
Yeah, no, of course.
Okay. I don't want to, yeah. So, there was Unleash. And, I think there are obviously others now. A lot of them, to me, look like they are more focused on product managers to try to do things like A/B tests, try to see which version of the dashboard converts better and all that stuff. To me, they didn't seem like they were meant for engineering teams that were, are interested in hooking up their, telemetry tools or their observability tools, things like that. And also, I noticed they were all implemented using REST. And I think, obviously REST is a great technology. Everyone is familiar with REST APIs. But at the time, gRPC was relatively new, or at least new to me. And I thought, this seems like a perfect use case for gRPC, where it's like, meant to be low latency. It's meant to run, in your application, in your data center, to do server-to-server communication. So I said, okay, there didn't seem to be a feature flag solution implemented with gRPC. Let me see if I can build one.
Man, you're saying all the right things. So a developer-focused, open-source feature flagging library that runs over HTTP2 with gRPC. I mean, that's got performance characteristics over it that I like and have struggled with in the past with feature flagging. Especially the SaaS angle. I've never understood why people are willing to accept that round trip time to just query a flag. And of course, they batch them now at the start of the application and all this other stuff. But it always seemed wild for me. And maybe not as wild as the Launch Darkly pricing, but I don't want to get into that. So.
Yeah.
All right, that's awesome. So why don't you give me... I'll throw this one to you, George. I've not heard your voice in a way. I'm starting to miss it.
Yeah.
What's the tech stack? We've heard gRPC. Tell me a little bit more about what Flipt is built upon.
Totally. Yes. Obviously, gRPC. Flipt is written in Go primarily, although we also embed a front-end application which is written in TypeScript and React. Previously, we were using just JavaScript and Vue, if I remember rightly, but we recently, in the last year, we sort of switched to TypeScript and React. And then Flipt is really quite extensible in terms of what you can run Flipt in front of, and we support a range of backends. So historically, Flipt from day one has supported relational database backends, so SQLite, Postgres, MySQL, and then eventually we had CockroachDB as well. I think now we support Terso as well. So we have those backends, and then also more recently we've been working on some slightly different backends to support more GitOps friendly workflows. So we support going direct to your local file system just to a set of files. We go direct to Git. You can go to object storage like AWS S3, or very recently, literally Wednesday, we added support for OCI registries as a source of truth. So you can plug this into a number of these backends that can be your source of truth. And then we also have a bunch of sort of ancillary technologies that we connect into. So we're fully instrumented with OpenTelemetry. I think we also have a native one straight to Jaeger if you don't want to use OpenTelemetry. I forget what else. I think maybe that is all the pieces of the puzzle. There are lots of pieces. You can pick and choose.
Again, you're saying all the right things, right? I hear tracing and OpenTelemetry. I hear Go. I mean, I'd love to hear some Rust, but I'll still take Go. I still love Go. Yeah. TypeScript is always, if you're doing front ends, I think TypeScript is a phenomenal language. This is a modern tech stack for a modern open source library. And that's, great. The only thing I'd love to see you just thrown in for the mix for the damn hell of it would be a bit of WebAssembly, but maybe that's for a future stream. So.
We have played.
Yeah.
We've played with Rust. We're playing with Rust. We have a Rust client. Mark's been playing with a client-side evaluator in Rust.
Oh, sweet.
And we've played with WASM on a different sort of project on the side, but we're thinking, if it's new and shiny, we love it, I think. We're always experimenting.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you both for sharing all of that. I think we should get a screen shared and maybe try and show people how they can get started with Flipt. Unless there's anything you want to cover before we get onto the hands-on component of this.
No, I don't think so. I have a little bit of a demo prepared if you want me to share.
Okay. Please, yeah, throw it up.
Hopefully it doesn't make me restart because we're using a new tool. Let's see. Oh, got it. Sorry, I just got to enter my password. Oh, it's going to make me quit.
So is it? You could just say later, and normally it still works.
Oh, nice. Hacks. Okay. All right. Let's share screen. No, it says Google Chrome has lost permissions to share screen.
Oh, you can restart and jump back in. I'll
Yeah,
tell
let
a
me do
joke to
that.
George. No, George, you tell a joke.
Well, I don't have any jokes
You're
to hand. Have you got one down?
I came up with some, like, I spent half an hour, maybe not even as much as that, at Halloween, Googling jokes from my 5-year-old daughter to tell her she was going trick-or-treating. And they were all absolutely terrible. But the best part of it is that she started trying to make up her own jokes, but she doesn't really understand why the jokes are funny. So she laughs at any joke I tell her, but then she tries to tell a joke and she says stuff like, "Why did the chicken cross the road?" "To get his dinner." And you're like, "Yeah, I don't think you quite understand the
straight to the
structure of
point.
the joke." Yeah. And Mark's just like, "What the
That
fuck?"
was a good joke. God, all right. It's still saying I can't share. Let me try it one more time.
Yeah, it's all right. No rush. Take your time.
Screen recording. It's because I don't normally use Google Chrome. Maybe that's why.
I'm now typing, "Tell me a dinosaur joke for a 5-year-old" into ChatGPT.
Right,
Why did the dinosaur bring a ladder to the party?
I don't know why.
Because it heard the drinks were on the roof. Roof. That's terrible.
Wait, what?
Right. Tell me a Linux container joke. Why did the Linux container go to therapy?
Don't know why.
Because it had a severe case of separation anxiety. Man, ChatGPT should not give up its day job.
I should not.
Hey, I see a screen
There
share.
we go. All right. Sweet.
Yeah, we're in.
Okay, let me close that. Yep. All right, can y'all see?
We can. I'm going to do the obligatory. You're going to have to triple tap zoom on a couple of these things, but other than that,
Let me increase the. Is that any better?
I'd go one more on each. I know it feels big on your side, but the audience will thank you.
Yeah, my mouse went away now, so that's fun. Okay. I cannot find my mouse. What is happening?
Didn't pray to the demo gods.
Yeah.
If you wiggle it fast enough, should Mac not make it jump out the screen?
Big old mouse.
I really don't know where it went. I'm going to hook up a USB mouse.
I thought you went
This is wild.
Right, the null channel says, "Thanks for putting this together. We need more GitOps." Yeah, we always need more GitOps.
Always.
I always feel that the Weaveworks folks missed a trick by calling it GitOps and not CommitOps. Like, they've tied it right to one thing, and I think CommitOps just sounds a bit nicer anyway.
Yeah.
All right, I'm ready now. I don't know. Can you still see my screen?
No, it's been unshared.
Okay. That's probably for the best.
All right. Thanks for coming. We'll see you later.
All right. Good. Cool. Found my mouse. Everything's good. All right. So so this is our documentation, right? You just go to flipt.io/docs. And it puts you in this getting started page. And the demo that I'm going to do is based off of what we call Flipt Labs. And it's this little repository put together to kind of demonstrate like what you can do with Flipt, because one of the challenging things that we found when trying to show this tool off is that it requires integration with an application to really be useful, right? Like, it's not really useful in itself. Like, I mean, you can run it via, very simply, very easily via Docker But then you load the dashboard and it's like, okay, I can create some flags and create some segments, but what do I do with that? And so to kind of solve that problem, we created this repo called Flipt Labs. And so we created a couple like demo applications to show it off. And so the one I'm going to demonstrate is called Chatbot. And so let's see. So I have it running locally, and it's basically a kind of a live tutorial that you can kind of run through, on your own. And so we have like 3 different sections of it. We have like a basic, an advanced, and a GitOps. I'm going to fast forward through the GitOps because I think that's probably more interesting to people. The basic is just kind of like, what are flags? Why would you use them? That kind of thing. And so this example is basically going to show you how you could roll out a chatbot for your application to a subset of users. And so you can kind of test it in production. And then it's going to show you how you can change the runtime behavior of that chatbot using feature flags without having to do a code redeploy. And it's going to do all that with serving feature flag data from Git. And so that's kind of the GitOps aspect of it. I guess any questions or anything before I start? Or no?
Nope.
Cool.
Hang on.
All right.
David's saying something, but I can't hear you, David.
Can you hear me, Mark?
Yeah.
I can hear you now, yeah.
Huh. All right. I don't really have any questions, right? There was something really cool that you said at the start that I want to kind of emphasize instead. It's like a frame, right, for people that are going to see this demo. And you said that, feature flags allow us, I can't remember your exact phrase, right, but to make 2 things distinct: deployment and feature delivery.
Release.
Really, exactly. Feature flags are such a great way of, especially as people are doing proper continuous integration or trunk-based development, any of these things where they're constantly working on new things, they're always in production. And feature flags allow you to toggle them on, off, release them to subsets, do alpha, beta testing, A/B test, all this other stuff. Really, it reduces a lot of the anxiety and fear that people have from continuous deployment or deployment pipelines. So, keep that in mind as you look at this demo and you go into it, and just understand how much flexibility, stability, and performance power, all of that stuff you can get. So no pressure, but you've got to live up to all of that now.
Yeah. One, I guess in that vein, one quote I came across recently from Rich Hickey, the founder of Clojure, I believe, said, "All bugs in production pass testing," which I thought was interesting because it's like, you can't test everything, right? So like testing in production is, in my opinion, one of the best ways to handle things that you can't catch and test. So yeah. Anyways, let's get going. So this all runs with Docker Compose, and so I have the repository checked out locally. I'm in the chatbot folder here. Let me increase the font a little bit. And so it just is going to kind of give you an overview of what's going to happen, but I'm just going to copy and paste these commands. And hopefully this should all work. I tested it yesterday. So basically what this is doing, what this is doing is spinning up an instance of Flipt in a Docker container, and it's also spinning up an instance of Gitia. I'm not really sure how to pronounce it. Probably Git, which is an open source, Git, like GitHub kind of clone. And so that's going to allow us to demonstrate the GitOps part of it. And so what we're going to do, okay, looks like everything's running. So we're going to go to, all right. So this is Git, and it's going to ask us to log in. I probably should have opened that in a different tab. So we're going to log in with the username Flipt, password. And so let me also just kind of demonstrate Flipt while we're here. So this is the Flipt dashboard once you get it up and running. And so here you can see we have a flag called chat enabled. And this is the flag that is going to guard our chatbot that's going to show up in this tutorial. Spoiler. And so right now it's disabled. And one thing you can see is that Flipt is running in read-only mode. And that's because it's backed by our GitOps backend, backed by Git storage. And so normally, if you're not running in one of these declarative backends, it's a basic CRUD, web app, right? You can click on things, create things, all that stuff. But because we're now serving your feature flag data from Git, obviously you can't. There would be a mismatch if you were able to create things in the UI and also create things in Git. I mean, that's something we eventually want to solve, is to allow you to, use the UI, and then that still gets persisted to whatever backend you're using. But right now, if you're using one of our declarative backends, it puts Flipt in this read-only mode. And so, yeah, you can see that the flag is disabled right now. But we're going to change that by taking a look at, so here's the YAML file, the declarative format that Flipt is reading from, which defines that flag and defines its state. And so right now it matches what you see in the UI. And so we're going to continue with the tutorial here. And yeah, so basically it's saying, okay, you're at the point where you want to enable this chatbot. And here's how you would do that. So, everything I just said, it's in the disabled state. It says, luckily, one of our colleagues has already prepared a PR to enable this flag. So we're going to go here, and our colleague has not prepared the PR. Let me restart this. Nothing like a live demo. Sometimes this demo doesn't work every time, so you have to recreate it. I blame George.
Yeah, it's definitely my fault.
Yeah. There we go. All right. So now we can see that our helpful colleague has prepared a PR to change the feature flag from false to true. And so we're going to merge that. Oh, it's going to make me sign in again. All right. Okay, so merged. And now, hey, now our little chatbot shows up almost instantly, because what's happening in the background is Flipt is polling that GitHub repository, watching for changes, and it saw that, okay, the flag went from enabled false to true. And so now your application can query that flag and get the value of true. And so here's our little chatbot that showed up. And so this doesn't really matter for the demo, but this chatbot is actually trained on our own docs. We actually went and embedded our documentation into a vector database and doing all that OpenAI business. And so you can actually ask this chatbot questions about Flipt itself. And you say like, and yeah, I can give you a somewhat helpful answer of where Flipt runs. And so, yeah, I guess I'll pause here for any questions before I go on, or anything you want to talk about. I can't hear, David, I think you're muted or. Can someone hear you?
Ah, interesting. You hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what happened there, but the Mac changed my microphone input to be iPhone.
Oh.
And I don't know why, which explains why I was saying the best jokes in the world just like 5 minutes ago. Nobody was laughing.
It does.
Anyway, I said blame George, and then you said blame George, and I was like, hold on a minute, I just made
the same
that
way.
Stealing my jokes.
No, this is really cool. Keep going. I do have questions, but I think I want to see the DX of this, the code perspective. But let's keep going just now, and then I'll come back to that.
Okay, cool. So yeah, so I just refreshed Flipt, and you can see that it's enabled here as well. And so let's continue on. Okay, I already did that. Okay, and so basically what I just showed is like how most people, I think of feature flags, kind of that Boolean state, like on or off, either features enabled or disabled. And so another cool thing you can do with Flipt and most other feature flag tools is they have the idea of variants. And so it's not just a typical on off, but you can also return other values. And you can say, okay, I want these to be distributed at different percentages. So you could say, I want 50% of my users to get the value blue, another 50% to get red, and you can change that over time, right, without redeploying your app. And so we're kind of trying to demonstrate that here, where we added another feature flag called chat personas. And so what we want to demonstrate is, we're testing, like put yourself in the shoes of an engineer who's trying to deploy this chatbot for real, and maybe they want to test out different personas of that chatbot. So like the default is like friendly. Maybe they're feeling sassy, and they want to test out a sarcastic chatbot, and then just for kicks they want to test out one who tells you like BS, right? Who's a liar. And so we've tried to demonstrate that with another pull request here, where we
how annoying would it be for me to ask that we change one of the personas just for laughs? Can we have an Ace Ventura persona?
We can try. Yeah. Let me merge this.
I'll let your demo
PR, and then we can
matters in the works. So.
Actually, because in the next step, we're actually going to modify this file and push it up, and so we'll get there. So let me go ahead and merge that. All right, and so let's see what happened in Flipt. So now there's two flags, right? There's chat enabled and chat personas. And you can see it created those variants that I was talking about. And then we have the rules defined, which say, okay, which percentage of requests are going to get which variant. And so they're all set at a third right now, right? Where default's slightly favored. And so continuing with the tutorial, I wish it would scroll up to the top. So in order to kind of test this, we need something that is distinct. So in this example, we're choosing like a username, right? But it could be anything like an IP address or user ID or whatever. But we need something to determine, okay, the stickiness. So we always want to make sure that the same user gets the same variant of chatbot, because it would be weird if all of a sudden you're talking to a friendly chatbot, and then all of a sudden he starts to get all like sassy on you, right? And so the way we're demonstrating that is via this username field. And so I'll just say my username is David, and then I'm going to ask the chatbot questions like, So first, you got the liar chatbot, but actually he is telling the truth here, so ignore that. But let's try George and see which version George gets. And so George got the sarcastic one. So what database doesn't it support? So you're pretty much covered. And so we're just trying to show that different users will get different variants, but George will always get this sarcastic one. David will always get the liar one, who's not necessarily lying. And so the way that you're controlling that is via PRs and contributions via Git. And so I think what might really bring it home is if we can show okay, as an engineer, as a developer, how would you actually make a change to, if you didn't have a PR prepared? So let's do that here. And we're going to clone it. Oh. And so now we're actually going to change that that percentage. So say we want to say, okay, we want everyone to get the sarcastic chatbot. I should have used NVim and not Vim because all my key bindings are off. So basically what I'm doing here is I'm setting all the other variations to 0 and the sarcastic one to 100%. And I'm going to close it, and I'm going to commit it and push it up.
Are you running Fig in your terminal?
Yes.
I always like seeing other people's terminal setups. They sound quite chunky.
Oh, yeah. I'm trying to remember which keyboard. I got it from WASD keyboards. It's like Cherry MX Clears.
Nice. Yeah, I do like. I don't know if it's WASD or WASD or whatever you're supposed to pronounce, but I do like their keyboards as well.
Yeah, I had a Code keyboard from forget who. Maybe it was them. I really like that one, but
that was actually WASD, but it was the Stack Overflow team that commissioned them. Yeah, that's gone back a while though. Like what, 2010, I think, is when they first came out.
That explains why it was crusty and I had to get a new one. Yeah, it's pretty old.
Yeah, they still sell them. I think they sell really well. So
nice. So basically, what I did is I just kind of YOLO'd this commit and pushed it to main. And now hopefully everybody should be getting the sarcastic chatbot regardless of who they are. And this is just me testing the same thing. But anyways, we can go back to Flipt and see that now that variant is at 100% without you making any changes in the UI.
Cool.
And that's, I guess, really ultimately what we're trying to demonstrate there.
All right. We've seen how to kind of configure the flags with Flipt. What does it look like from the SDK point of view? Like, how do I put this into my code?
Yeah. George, do you want to take that one?
Yeah. Do you want to see an actual example in code and share my screen? Would that be helpful?
Well, yeah, I'm assuming this website uses some sort of SDK to request the chatbot persona. So, if we could just take a look at that code and see, I want developers to be able to understand, okay, I can create the flags, push them to Git, it all does the reloading for me, but at runtime, at code time, how do I get this value?
Yeah, I can show that real quick. Just for this example labs demo, if that's what. Let's see. So I guess a broader answer to your question is kind of what SDKs do we support, and then I can talk about like which one the demo is using. And so as I alluded to earlier, Flipt supports both REST and gRPC. And so we have a combination of both SDKs. We have our REST SDKs available in like 5 or 6 different languages, Node, TypeScript, Python, Go, Rust, Java. We just added a PHP REST SDK because of an amazing contributor contributed that. And so that's currently in beta. And then as far as gRPC, obviously with gRPC, anybody can generate their own SDKs, or anyone can generate their own clients. That's one of the beauties of gRPC. But we have a couple that we've already went ahead and generated for you and published just to kind of remove that extra step. And so we have them for Go, Ruby, and .NET, and we're currently working on publishing a Java one. And then finally, we have we're supporting this project called Open Feature, which I don't know if you've heard about, but it's kind of like the open telemetry for feature flags, where they got a bunch of feature flag vendors together and said, let's come up with a common interface, a common API that we can all, conform to enable end users to basically have one SDK, but then be able to switch out feature flag providers. So it doesn't matter if you're using LaunchDarkly or Unleash or Flipt. You don't have to change your code. You can just swap out a different provider. And so it's actually a CNCF project. And, we have 2 different providers right now, Go and Java, and then we're with the PHP one on the way. And so I guess I can continue with the chatbot example and show the actual SDK code there.
Yeah.
If you want. Okay. And another thing to mention, sorry, before I get to that, is we also publish our Open API definition, and so you can generate your own REST clients as well if you want. But they're not as, they're kind of hit or miss on which ones are idiomatic. We have a REST SDK. We have a REST SDK. Yeah.
Yeah. There we go.
All right. So let's go. And let me just show you real quick what the chatbot is using. I think it's here. Nope. Let me just search. Sorry, I wasn't. Oh, no.
No more code search.
I know that. Sorry, I should have been more prepared. Is it here? Here it is. All right. Sorry. So here we're importing our Node SDK, and it's called Flipt API Client. And basically, you give it the environment or the URL that Flipt is available at. In this case, it's just localhost. And then we're just using a useEffects React hook to basically check this flag. Default here is the namespace. And I can talk about that in a second. But the flag is called chat enabled. And so it's just, whenever you refresh the page, basically saying, okay, check and see if not when you refresh the page, just checking every 5 seconds. If it's checking to see if this flag is enabled. And so that's pretty much it. It's just a single line to get the flag here.
Yeah, nice and easy. Cool.
Yeah.
I think as well in this project we've got correct me if I'm wrong, but the part that has the LLM is in Python, and that also has a Flipt client. So we have a Python SDK in here too, being demonstrated.
Yes, good point. Right. So I just showed the front end flag, and then we have on the back end, as George just said, we have a Python REST SDK as well. And so that one is doing all the variant checking to determine which persona the chatbot should respond with. And so let's get down here. Yeah. So Flipt can be used from a consumer point of view in a handful of ways. I would say probably 99% of people use our Evaluate API. And that's what this SDK is using here. And so that's taking that context, which in the labs example was the username, and it's sending it to Flipt, and it's saying, okay, give me what variant I should use, return to this user. And so that's this evaluate call here. And so here you can see it's building up that evaluation request. And we use a nomenclature called entity ID because we didn't want to kind of force you to think about feature flags as only a user-facing thing. And so, a lot of feature flag tools use the nomenclature of user ID. Well, I mean, you can use feature flags for pretty much anything, like rate limits, or log levels, or things that aren't necessarily driven by a user's action. And so that's why we just call it entity ID. But anyways, that's the username here. It does a call to evaluate, and it returns the variant. And here you can see we're actually using another field from the variant, which is an attachment, and that just allows you to put arbitrary JSON in the variant response. And that's where we're actually getting the prompt from, is that JSON response. So you can actually change the, well, if it wasn't in read-only mode, you could actually change the prompt within Flipt without having to redeploy your application, which would then change the behavior that OpenAI is getting.
Nice.
So, yeah.
All right. Anything else to demo, or will I put us back into big face mode?
I don't know, George. Did you want to demo the OCI, or I don't know? What do we want to do?
I mean, I could do a quick run through of sort of running Flipt with an OCI registry instead. If that's
happy to see it. Yeah, let's do it.
Let's do it. All right, bear with me. Make sure I'm on the right screen. Okay, let me share my screen. Yeah, so as we said, it's going to make me. I'm going to have to go through that same dance that Mark did. Obviously, bear with me.
All right, I'll get the jokes out.
I'll be right back.
I've asked OpenAI to tell me a joke about feature flags for a 5-year-old. Are you strapped in? You ready?
Yeah.
Why did the computer go to the circus? Because it wanted to see amazing feature flags perform their magical trick. Good time.
Oh no, I don't get it, OpenAI. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I don't think it understands jokes.
Yeah.
Much like my 5-year-old daughter.
All right. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
I see. I can't hear David now, so that's weird. But I can see that you can hear David. This is very confusing.
That's wild. Do you want me to translate, or?
Yeah, you relay.
Yeah, relay. There you go.
That's it. Can you see my screen? I can't see anyone.
Yes.
Else, so let me move it a bit smaller. Then maybe I can see other people. Oh no, because then I get the horrible windows.
Can you increase it?
Yes. Let's go big.
Yeah, that's good.
And then let me go. I'm going to create my own directory just to demonstrate this. So yeah, as I said, we recently added an OCI backend for Flipt. The purpose here was, so as we said before, our Git backend, it will sync your source repository in order to materialize its state, and that's great, especially for getting Flipt up and running really quick, because all you need is a GitHub repo and Flipt as a container, and then you've got everything you need with the clients to sort of build your end-to-end setup. But where that might eventually have some issues with scale is if you're constantly cloning your repository, and say you want to have your feature flags defined in line with your code in a mono-repo setup. Obviously, Flipt's performance starts to degrade with the sort of scale of the repository that it's syncing. So if that repository gets really big, then it takes a little bit longer for Flipt to have to start up and clone initially. And then if you've also got a large sort of flow of contributions into that Git repo, then all of that becomes work that Flipt has to go through to keep in sync that might not be relevant. And also maybe from like a security perspective, maybe you don't want to give Flipt an entire repository and all of its contents. Maybe you're really interested in just giving it like what it cares about, which is like flag state.
Can you hear me yet, George?
So OCI kind of presents a nice way to sort of solve these problems. And it obviously requires an extra component. You need like an OCI registry. But once you add that, Flipt comes with all the pieces you need to like you leverage that registry. And now that registries are so prevalent and so available, especially for folks that are already in containerized environments, you've usually got access to one. It's probably not a big ask to then start leveraging it for your feature flag state as well. So as I said, we've added some extra commands to the Flipt binary. So this is the same binary that is the server for Flipt, and these commands are all nestled under a sort of subcommand called bundle. And this allows you to turn a directory full of feature flag state into like an OCI bundle that you can push to some registry and then run Flipt over. So I'll just quickly create one of those files we've already seen, like a features.yaml file. I'm just going to make a flag called like my awesome feature. Probably doesn't matter. I'll turn it off for now. And I'm going to like turn that into a bundle. So we just build that. I'm just going to call it my bundle. I'm going to give it a tag. So there is a command to like look at all your bundles. This just builds a bundle that's local to your machine. You can actually run Flipt over local bundles too, if you want to, rather than having to go to a registry. But I think that doesn't really explain anything. You can see a bunch of other bundles I've built. This is very sort of familiar if you're used to using a tool like Docker and Docker build and things like that. Okay, so I'm going to now push that to a registry, and then I'm going to run Flipt and use that to sort of source it. So I'm going to use, if anyone's familiar with TTL.sh, which is like a ephemeral registry, I'm going to use that to sort of host it nice and quickly. TTL.sh asks that you give them a random UUID to push it to. So I'm going to push that bundle and just give it the UUID, and you can give it a time limit, sort of self-destructing bundle. So for the next 10 minutes, this will be available once I get it there. Oh, it's taking a while. It's a lot quicker normally, I promise. And now I'm gonna run Flipt. So I'm just gonna quickly run it locally. You just need to tell Flipt that we're going to use the OCI backend, and then we need to tell it like what repository we want to follow. So I'm going to tell it to follow this like 10-minute repo. I tell you what, I've just got too many instances of Flipt running. I've made that mistake before. Okay.
Wow, kill all. That was bold on a stream.
And if I
you still can't hear a thing I says, can you?
We're going to go. Oh, you come back over here. You go back to Chrome. Sorry for the infinite window. Cool. So we can see that flag. We could.
Can you zoom in a little bit?
Zoom in here. So we're back here in the.
Let me change my mic. Maybe that'll help them hear me.
We could update this bundle. Let's do that. So enable the feature flag.
Can you hear me, George?
Let's build the bundle.
Maybe I should restart Chrome.
Flipt is configured at the moment with a 30-second polling interval. So it might take a minute, well, not a minute, but half a minute to see that update. But you can obviously bring that poll interval down for eventually see this come through. That's there. So yes, so now you've got like the CLI for building bundles and distributing them. We think that this might help with scaling out the GitOps sort of workflow for flags.
Right.
And also,
Can
we
you tell
think you
George
could
I do
probably
have questions
leverage.
when he's ready.
We intend for you to leverage tags for doing things like pushing sort of different versions of flags for different environments. So you might use tags for like, long-lived staging environments, or you might tag them with the commit that they're built from and use that for preview environments or the branch that you're building on. So yeah, lots of
George
potential there. Yeah.
David says you look great, and he has questions when you have them.
Amazing. Yes.
All right, so that I don't have to translate everything I say through you, Mark. If you could ask George maybe just to leave and come back and see if it helps before we do this awkward route.
Yeah. The first question he has is, can you leave and come back and see if that will fix this audio issue?
Let's do that. Be right back.
Okay.
I mean, I have no problem written all my questions through you, but
it's kind of fun. Yeah. Fun social experiment or something.
Yeah, it's like I'm Georgie's partner. We're broken up, and I'm like, "Can you please tell George I won't be home for dinner?
Come get his stuff." Yeah.
Hello, George. No.
Maybe he muted you. Is that a thing?
Yeah. Did you mute me, George?
Is there a way to mute?
All right. Let's try this.
It's very strange.
Can you hear me? And nope, nothing. All right, we'll do this the awkward way, but we are near the end, so it doesn't really matter.
Okay.
Yeah, I have no idea why you can't hear me, George. So really sorry about that. But this is really cool. There's a few things that I think are really important about supporting OCI in this way. One, I really like mono repositories. I can't remember if we've had this conversation or not in the past. I'm going to give you a huge monologue here, Mark, and I want to hear word for word.
Okay, real quick. David really likes mono repositories.
Amazing.
Yep.
And one of the challenges of a mono repository, and this comes down to building container artifacts and trying to do GitOps, but also the same for feature flags with GitOps, is that I want my feature flags to live next to the code, or at least in some representation of them, being able to ship them away so that developers can understand what's happening, right? When we support OCI, we can actually say through a CI/CD process, we can build an artifact, a snapshot of time, and push it somewhere that can easily be consumed. And while Git or commits aren't technically the source of truth, I mean, they are. We just have like a materialized view that we put into OCI. And I think that's a really powerful model. So that's sweet.
He says it's all good.
You'd really enjoy watching this back later. I get like all the context.
Yeah, George, you can just watch it back later, right? Mark, you can answer my questions from now on. I don't want to speak to George. Okay. So what I'm curious about now is, like, say I go all in on this. I want to use Flipt. I want to use gRPC. I want feature flags. I want OCI. These are things that, or generally, these are things I want to use yesterday. So one of the things that George did is he ran Flipt with the feature backend store. I can't remember the flag, right? But he pointed it to an OCI artifact, including the tag. Can I follow a version tag or a prefix of tags? Like, how do I get updates to that? And without overriding the tag, can I? Or do I just need to accept that I have an ephemeral tag?
Today you cannot. It's basically the tags are meant to be like you said, the source of truth, right? And you would have to update the configuration file to say I want to follow a different tag. Prefix tags is a good idea that we haven't thought about. I mean, obviously, if you use something like latest, which is bad practice, but if you keep pushing the latest, Flipt will continuously pull down any changes. But if you're using something like a Git SHA to tag your image, then you're just going to have to update it each time.
Yeah, a pattern we see in Kubernetes seems to be to use semantic versions on the tagging, and then the GitOps controller will resolve that to a SHA over every interval. So you're still deploying to one specific digest, which is great, but we can opt into updates on a minor or a patch release, but not on a major release and stuff like that. I think that kind of semantic, some resolver. Yeah, that would be a really cool iteration. And it's open source, right? So if I want to see this, I could just go and hack on some code.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, really, really cool. So that's a great demo from both of you. I'm going to, just because things are now awkward and George is the spare part,
I'll just George out. It's fun.
The best, to be honest.
I'll just do a quick recap then. Flipt is a pretty sweet piece of software. It's open source. It's ready to go. It uses gRPC. It can be performant. It provides a strong developer-first experience for doing feature flagging. It's a single binary that can be deployed very easily locally using Terzo was the one that stood out to me. Like, I think Terzo is such a great product. So, using something like that seems like a great idea to me. And even OCI as well. So lots of different opportunities there for me to run this in production and be happy. And a pretty nice SDK front end where I can use generated gRPCs in pretty much any language, right? Because it's so ubiquitous now. But also a handful of full REST-like, I don't even know what the correct terminology is anymore, APIs for people that want to go a more traditional route. I mean, throw in some GraphQL, you've got everything covered there, right? But yeah, pretty sweet.
We're not GraphQL fans. No.
Oh, that's all right. Any last words that you want to share, and then maybe share a bit more about the roadmap, right? We've got a snapshot now, a good understanding of what Flipt is, the problem it solves, where it is today. Why don't you tell me a little bit more about tomorrow? And feel free to share any of it links or Twitter profiles. Shamelessly plug anything that you want.
Yeah, great. So I don't know if I can actually type in chat here, but our website is flipt.io. Our repository is flipt-io on GitHub. As David said, there's a number of ways you can deploy and run Flipt yourself. We support, Docker containers. Obviously, we have a Helm chart. So I would say we were cloud adjacent. We're not cloud native, maybe, but we can run pretty much on any infrastructure because it's written in Go, and we have binaries for almost every architecture that you can think of. As far as the roadmap, so today Flipt does all of its evaluation server side, which is probably the most common pattern that I think most feature flag tools kind of use. But that again, it's not great for everybody. So like the mobile use case, for example, if you have a mobile app that the user might not have great network connectivity, you don't want every time the user does something in your mobile app to have to reach out over the network and evaluate a feature flag. So we're actually working on client-side evaluation as well, client-side SDKs. And so that's where the Rust comes in. We basically rewrote our evaluation logic in Rust. And then we're using FFI, which is foreign function interface, I think. Yep. So we're creating a dynamic library that actually does the evaluation. And then the client-side SDKs written in Go, TypeScript, Ruby, what have you, will basically use FFI to say, okay, I have this context, now do the evaluation Rust library, and then it will return a response. And so we actually created a new set of gRPC or an internal API to take all of the flag state and then the Rust library can query that endpoint, get the data that it needs to then perform the evaluation client side. And as you can imagine, it's extremely fast, client side. And so we're actually working on that right now. We hope to have that open source in the next couple of weeks. We're just kind of running into some issues with like how to package those SDKs in the native languages, because not all of them allow you to easily link a library written in Rust and then push up to the package registry. But anyway, so if you have any interest in Rust or FFI or integrating with other languages, please drop by our Discord or our GitHub repository. Yeah.
Nice. Can you hear me, George? No.
Nope.
So, yeah, that was really interesting, actually. If you had mentioned that sooner, we'd probably had about a 20-minute chat on the client-side evaluator, but I don't want to keep you too much longer. But it did make me wonder, could we be in a position 6, 9, 12 months from now, right, where my front-end application using WebAssembly, most likely, just pulls the OCI artifact with the flags itself and evaluates everything in browser, or even, instead of me hosting Flipt somewhere, can I just embed it, maybe via WebAssembly again, into any application and have the evaluator pull the OCI artifact for me in a regular interval? Like I think that opens up a lot of different runtime applications for Flipt that we just haven't really seen before. I don't know if there's something that people would be interested in or want, but if I could, I'd probably try it, right?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I mean, and yeah, not to make this go any longer, but we. Sorry, I didn't mean that in negative. That's on the WASM front. We have played around with, how like I briefly showed like configuring the rules in the UI, or you can do the same with YAML. Like, what if users could write their own evaluation rules in a language of their choice? Those compile to WASM. The evaluator then procs out to that evaluation time. So you're not limited to just the pieces that we expose in our UI. You can use any language to define your rules and your rollout strategy.
All right, I'm going to push this a little bit longer because there's too much here. But this is now the roadmap roadshow for Flipt. Just because you're talking about using languages to define what those evaluations are, right? We're talking about expressions, and like you're written in Go, which means you're probably in quite a nice position to support something like CEL, like the common expression language, to allow people to rate arbitrary queries against that as well. And I think there's just so many ideas, man. I could sit here for hours and just talk about all the cool things I would like to try with this. But I think that is definitely a session for another day. So what I'll do is we'll look back, right? Early next year, we'll see where Flipt is and talk about some fun stuff we could do. All right. George, it's been not so much a pleasure, but Mark, thank you for joining me.
Thanks for having us, David. We really appreciate it.
All right. Now it's the end. I'm going to hit the end broadcast button, but just to make it a little bit more fun, the pose is going to be held in eternity and potentially in the screenshot for this thumbnail. So as I hit end, prepare yourselves, stay static, and we'll see you all next time. Thanks.